كلمته كانت واضحة مثل ما أنا دعمت هيدا بدي أدعم إسرائيل.
فتحنا أبواب اللهيب، أبواب جهنم على البلد.
Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, August 27th. I'm Yumna Nofal, and these are today's headlines. Syria says it is prepared to confront the whole world in the face of threats of Western military action following an alleged chemical weapons attack. Russia and Iran warned the United States and its allies against the military intervention in Syria, saying it could have catastrophic consequences for the region. And an overnight shootout between the Lebanese army and gunmen wounds 6 people, including 2 soldiers in Tripoli. Syria says that it is prepared to confront the whole world in the face of threats of Western military action following an alleged chemical weapons attack last week, which rebels say killed more than 1,000 people. Syrian Foreign Minister Walid Muallim says that his country will defend itself in case of any Western military strikes against it. In a press conference in Damascus, Foreign Minister Walid Muallim says that the chemical weapons argument is a pretext under which to start a military campaign against Syria. He says this was ultimately designed to serve the interests of both Israel and the al-Qaeda-affiliated Nusra Front, which is a rebel faction. If this military campaign is meant to morally undermine our people, he said, I believe they are mistaken, adding that the people of Syria are united together with their armed forces and leadership. In regards to the UN chemical weapons inspectors currently in Damascus, Muallim said the government was dealing with them with transparency and openness, and that the team would resurrect its work, which was interrupted by sniper fire on Wednesday. He blamed rebels for the delay. Also, Syria has agreed to allow UN inspectors access to sites in suburbs of Damascus where alleged chemical attacks occurred last week. The inspectors continue their investigation as cars were seen moving around the Damascus hotel where they are staying. However, the inspectors did not speak to journalists, and it was not clear who was going where. This comes a day after they visited the Muadamiyah suburb of Damascus, where a vehicle was shot by unknown snipers. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has strongly denied carrying out chemical attacks, telling Russian newspaper Izvestia that the allegation insults common sense and that the rebels were responsible for what could be the world's worst poison gas strike in 25 years. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says the evidence of a massive deadly chemical attack is undeniable, and he is accusing the Syrian government of trying to cover it up, signaling the United States is edging closer to a possible military response. In the most forceful U.S. reaction yet after Wednesday's suspected gas attack outside Damascus, Kerry said U.S. President Barack Obama believes there must be accountability for those who would use the world's most heinous weapons against the world's most vulnerable people.
What we saw in Syria last week should shock the conscience of the world. It defies any code of morality. Let me be clear. The indiscriminate slaughter of civilians, the killing of women and children and innocent bystanders by chemical weapons is a moral obscenity. By any standard, it is inexcusable, and despite the excuses and equivocations that some have manufactured, it is undeniable. What is before us today is real, and it is compelling. So I also want to underscore that while investigators are gathering additional evidence on the ground, our understanding of what has already happened in Syria is grounded in facts, informed by conscience, and guided by common sense. Our sense of basic humanity is offended not only by this cowardly crime, but also by the cynical attempt to cover it up. At every turn, the Syrian regime has failed to cooperate with the UN investigation, using it only to stall and to stymie the important effort to bring to light what happened in Damascus in the dead of night.
Russia and Iran give fresh warning to the U.S. and its allies against a military intervention. The Russian Foreign Ministry says that such an intervention could have catastrophic consequences for the region and called on the international community to show prudence over the crisis. Russia also expressed regret over a decision by the U.S. to postpone a meeting scheduled for Wednesday in The Hague and on an international peace conference for Syria. Gennady Gatilov, Russia's deputy foreign minister, wrote on Twitter that such talks would have been particularly useful at a time when military action is hanging over the country. Separately, Iran repeated its opposition to any U.S. attack by warning that a military intervention would engulf the whole region. And Britain's armed forces are drawing up contingency plans for military action in Syria, according to Prime Minister David Cameron's spokesman, but no decision has been made about what action may be taken. In Australia, Prime Minister Kevin Rudd says the international principles over events in Syria are clear, adding he is in talks with President Obama and he will not turn a blind eye to the situation.
I do not believe the world can simply turn a blind eye to the use of chemical weapons against a civilian population, resulting in nearly 300 deaths or more and some 3,600 people hospitalised. If you turn a blind eye to that and say that action here of one type or another may be inconsistent with action there and action there, we are losing the central big call here. And the central big call is, how do you send a message to every autocracy in the world contemplating the future use of chemical weapons in certain circumstances in the future? Hindsight of history, I do not want to be in a position of responsible political leadership where I was party to turning such a blind eye, and I won't.
An overnight shootout between the Lebanese army and gunmen wounds 6 people, including soldiers, in northern Tripoli. According to a security source, the wounded in the midnight clash in the Maloule neighborhood were 2 soldiers, 3 gunmen, and a Syrian man who was standing on the balcony of his apartment at the time of the shooting. The identities of the injured soldiers have been revealed as Bilal Yasser Khalil and Ramiz Marwan Midlish. Caretaker Interior Minister Marwan Sharbil reveals requesting explosive detection equipment from top officials. In remarks to An-Nahar Daily, Sharbil revealed that conferees tasked the Finance Ministry during a higher defense council at the Babda Palace to study the cost of such an acquisition and take the appropriate measures. Sharbil described the situation in Lebanon as difficult but not impossible to control. He said that efforts are being exerted to cooperate with heads of municipalities in Lebanon to get police to assist the internal security forces in keeping the situation under control. According to ministerial sources, this request comes amid financial problems faced by the government in paying the compensations for those affected from last week's twin car bombs in Tripoli. Miati has declared that the bombings have damaged 222 housing units, compelling the government to provide their owners with appropriate housing. Coming up next, very interesting story. Hundreds of thousands seeking pleasures their spouses cannot fulfill. We've got more when we return. Welcome back. Palestinian negotiators canceled planned peace talks with Israel. The cancellation comes after a raid on a refugee camp in the occupied West Bank in which 3 Palestinians, including a UN worker, were killed by Israeli soldiers. According to medical sources, at least 15 others were wounded, 6 of them suffering from serious injuries during clashes between Israeli forces and Palestinians that erupted after the raid on the Kalandia camp on Monday. Israel and the Palestinian Authority had recently resumed U.S.-brokered peace talks after a long halt last month. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency condemned the killing of their employee, a 34-year-old father of 4. Violence in the West Bank has escalated since the beginning of 2013. Israeli forces have killed 14 Palestinians in the occupied territory this year, compared to 3 killed in the same period back in 2012. Tunisia's ruling Islamist party Ennahda details proposals to end weeks of political crisis, saying they will accept a technocrat government once consensus on the constitution and an election timetable are agreed upon. Umbrella opposition group, the National Salvation Front, has repeatedly demanded the resignation of the Islamist-led government and the formation of a nonpartisan administration before negotiating on the constitution and timing of fresh elections. The opposition accuses Ennahda of failing to rein in Tunisia's hardline Salafist movement, who are blamed for murdering MP Mohamed Brahimi in July, and Shukri Belaid, another prominent secular politician whose assassination in February brought down the first Islamist-led coalition. Ennahda has also been accused of failing to restart the economy and to improve living standards. And Al-Qaeda denies U.S. allegations it is plotting massive attacks in Yemen. The extremist network has also refuted reports first confirmed by Yemen's President Abdurabuh Mansour Hadi that U.S. intelligence services had intercepted a conversation between Al-Qaeda chief Ayman al-Zawahiri and Nasser al-Wuhayshi, head of the Yemen-based Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. A source close to Hadi quoted the Yemeni leader as saying Friday that in the alleged conversation between the Al-Qaeda leaders, Wuhayshi told Zawahiri he would be hearing of something that will change the course of history. Hadi and U.S. President Barack Obama had discussed the matter at the White House on August 1st, according to the same source. Now, for news around the world in brief, mudslides crashed through several homes in eastern Mexico, killing at least 13 people after a tropical storm pelted the state of Veracruz with heavy rains. The storm, named Fernand, weakened to a tropical depression after making landfall just before midnight, unleashing a deluge that flooded streets, homes, and businesses in some towns and caused rivers to overflow in others. The storm triggered 16 mudslides, while storm-related damage was reported in 22 municipalities, affecting more than 450 homes. Russian prosecutors raid a Moscow apartment of the country's leading gay activist, Nikolai Alexeyev. The whole flat was dug up, tiles in the bathroom broken, and personal belongings thrown out. This incident is one in a string of violent conflicts Russia has been witnessing between homosexuals and the anti-gay government over the past few months. And a forensic team arrives at an abandoned textile mills complex in India's financial capital, Mumbai, to search for evidence at the location where a 22-year-old photojournalist was gang raped. The attack on August 22nd triggered protests and an outcry on social media, with many users shocked that it took place in Mumbai, widely considered to be India's safest city for women. One man was arrested on Friday, and 20 police teams are pursuing the 4 others who had been identified. The woman was on the mill on an assignment with a male colleague, and the pair was separated by the attackers, and her colleague was tied up with a belt while she was assaulted. A dating service promoting adultery is being launched in Hong Kong. With its slogan, "Life is short, have an affair," the service's website boasts more than 20 million users in more than 15 countries. The founder of the website, Noel Biderman, called the Hong Kong an unfaithful society, backing up his statement with statistics proving that the website had received 322,000 hits in the past year, with no money spent on marketing. While Hong Kong religious and family planning groups have been coming together to attack the service, Biderman says that the country's escalating divorce rates indicate appetite for this product. Government data shows 30 out of 100 married couples filed for a divorce in 2011, twice as many as in 1991. And on that note, we are going to remind you of our headlines today. Syria says it is prepared to confront the whole world in the face of threats of Western military action following an alleged chemical weapons attack. Russia and Iran warned the United States and its allies against a military intervention, saying it could have catastrophic consequences for the region. And an overnight shootout between the Lebanese army and gunmen wounds 6 people, including 2 soldiers in Tripoli. Those are your Tuesday headlines live on Future Television in Beirut. I'm Yumna Naufal, wishing you a good night. Be safe.
كلمته كانت واضحة، مثل ما أنا دعمت هيدا بدي أدعم هذا.
فتحنا أبواب اللهيب، أبواب جهنم على البلد.